Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast, um, or Diaphragm Dynasty, depending on which one you're watching from, because these will be posted on both of my podcasts. So just a heads up there. But watching this Michael Jackson biopic film that's coming up in April of next year, it got me to thinking about why Michael Jackson will never be duplicated. And it's a lot of different reasons, and I have several reasons why. But I was thinking about his superstardom and his pop success and how he was able to start from the bottom level all the way up to now. Because, now when they play, when superstars come out of nowhere or get fame out of nowhere, they always say the same thing. Is this person AI or is this person a plant? So Michael Jackson, people were able to see his growth in the industry from a kid, I think from all the way from 8 or 9 years old, all the way until he was, his passing when he was around 50 years old. So you got to see 4 5 decades of greatness from this guy, and you got to see the maturation of what he became and how long it took to get it there. Because as I talked about before, you didn't have the advent of social media, or you didn't have the internet, you didn't have podcasts. You didn't have all these different avenues to promote your music or promote your brand. You had to go you had to go to the radio station and things like that. So that's the first reason why Michael Jackson can never be duplicated, because he did all of this stuff without a Twitter, Instagram. He did all of this without cell phones. They didn't have cell phones. They had landlines back then, which most kids don't even know about. They had VCRs. They didn't have digital media or anything like that. They didn't have streaming, which if Thriller was streamed and was able to be bought, I'm pretty sure it would have did even more crazier numbers than the 20 plus million that it sold. So you have to think about how crazy that was to be bigger than Beyonce and Taylor Swift combined without the machine which is the internet, which is now. Because that it's a huge advantage to have the internet now, but it is some disadvantages because you don't see the physical sales and streaming. People just have to pay $10 a month and they have unlimited access to your catalog for the most part, and they don't really have to buy music singularly. So Michael Jackson, you have to think in the era where he was, people had to get off their couches or get out of their houses to actually purchase these albums. Now, they could order them through mail, but you still had to physically wait for them and buy them physically. You didn't have to press a button on your phone, pay for a membership, and then have access to the music. So you had to go out there and look for the music and actually find it from where, famously Columbia House. You had music stores like FYE, which I believe is still in business, but they don't really sell CDs anymore. You had to go to like all of these different music houses to buy the albums. And then when the singles came out, you had to buy the singles until the album came out. So there were a lot of inconvenient things that didn't seem inconvenient back now, but when you think about the digital age now, it was very inconvenient. So Michael Jackson being able to get people out of the houses and get people to spend out of their pockets for each album or each single, because he had huge singles, especially on the Thriller album, and I want to say the Bad album as well. But just to get people out their houses to do this was immensely difficult to do, especially in this era. If you had those options now, we wouldn't really have that many superstars. Um, but nevertheless, um, he didn't have this benefit. So that's one of the reasons why Michael Jackson can never be duplicated, because he did all this without the internet, and most people couldn't do that today. And then two is because Michael Jackson could do several different things. So he could sing and dance, and he could be an activist for the people. So we know Taylor Swift is known for her singing and songwriting, but she can't dance worth a lick. Beyonce is known for singing mostly, and she's not really known for dancing. Prince, he was a huge superstar as well, but he was mostly known for the artistry. Not so much even more of the singing part of it. It's more his musicianship. but he wasn't a dancer like that as well. And Michael Jackson had not only did he have songs like Beat It, Thriller, Billie Jean, but he created one of the best dance moves of all time in the moonwalk. And most people don't have that trademark in their arsenal, or they don't have that unique move that they have. Similar in basketball when Kareem had the sky hook or Jordan had the fadeaway or, with the tongue out and stuff like that. It's very rare that a superstar has, or I don't really know if you can really call yourself a superstar. You can just be a star without a patent, without that trademark patent move or one thing about yourself. And Michael Jackson had that in the moonwalk. And also, the ad libs, the he, and all that stuff is still mimicked today, uh, 40 years or so after it was first invented. And most people don't have those ad libs and things like that because I don't know any ad lib that a Taylor Swift has, that a Beyonce has. Prince had it a little bit, but for the most part, Michael Jackson was ahead of his time as far as being able to do both, being able to sing and dance and have that balance. Now, you can say Chris Brown has that, but his pedigree is based upon Michael Jackson's, and what he said it himself that his inspiration is Michael Jackson, and you can see it in his music. So the DNA is there. But Michael Jackson was a trendsetter. Even James Brown before him, you could say, but James Brown didn't have that superstar ability like a Michael Jackson had. Michael Jackson took what James Brown had and took it up to the 10th degree, being able to have even more modernization, posted what James Brown had because his stuff was basically radio for the most part in the earliest part of his career. And with racism and things like that, racism kind of dwindled down when Michael Jackson was coming up, but James Brown was in smack dab in the part of racism where people used to take their music and take their ideas as their own, and then were able to get away with it. But when Michael Jackson came up, a lot of those issues dwindled down or kind of got fixed to some degree. So that was kind of a disadvantage that James Brown had, but Michael Jackson was able to be in a better position because of what James Brown went through. And then thirdly, why Michael Jackson can't be duplicated is because his activism. Because most artists today are just artists and they say PC and they don't want to speak out on issues. Now you have to shout out the artists who do, but those artists usually are blackballed, i.e., a Lupe Fiasco or other artists who stood out on the activism. And it's very rare if you do have the activism in your DNA that you don't get blackballed unless you wield a lot of power in the league or in your industry, i.e., LeBron James, who he always speaks them on social issues, and he doesn't get counseled because he has so much power in the league, and you really can't counsel him. But Michael Jackson was in the same mold, but of course he's in an era that's not the internet era, so it's very difficult, or it was more difficult for people to see these things, but they come to light now because we have the privilege of having internet and having access to so much information that we didn't have before. But we know that he was an advocate on his songs, songs like "They Don't Care About Us," songs about like "Black or White." He had those elements in his music, and a lot of people think that's one of the reasons why the narrative was always spent around him to be something else. So and his philanthropy as well was something that can be duplicated. He was a huge um, advocate or philanthropist when it comes to substance abuse and charitable causes, all these different things. And um, he just was a standout guy as far as that goes. And they said it was equivalent to today's money would be $500 million or close to $1 billion of how much money he actually gave away in his career. Because even we know he made an exorbitant amount of money, especially in those times in the 80s and especially the 80s and early 90s, the money he was making. Um, he donated a lot of that money away to these charitable issues or societal issues that he cared a lot about. But people didn't publicize that a lot because, like I said, they want to make the narrative about Michael Jackson other things. And then the fourth reason, the fourth reason Michael Jackson can never be duplicated because of the fashion, the glittery gloves, the white high socks, the high water pants that he used to wear, the hat. the voice. He has so many different trademarks that you knew who it was without seeing him. If you saw the glitter glove, you know it was Mike. If you saw the hat tilted, it was Mike. If you saw the high pants that showed the entire, thigh high socks, pretty much, you knew it was Mike. The shoes, the dress shoes, the slip ons, the moonwalk. No other artist has that many signatures. I don't know any really signatures from any artist today other than maybe the Shiesty. How many artists have that much invested into them like Mike did? Mike has so much invested in him with so many different aspects, whether it was the persona, whether it was the dance move, it was the voice, it was the smash hits like Beat It and Billie Jean, Thriller album, which is considered one of the best albums of all time in any music genre. So that can't be duplicated. How many artists can have that much invested into them? If you want to say a Drake, he doesn't really have a signature. If you want to say the singy rap songs, yeah, you can say that, but that's not really that's been done before. Lauryn Hill has done that. Artists have done that before, but you don't have any artist to compare to what Michael Jackson did in his era and throughout history, and it probably never be duplicated again because artists labels are being cheap now and they don't put much investment unless you invest in yourself and create these things yourself. But Michael had a whole persona, he had a whole character. He was a Halloween character walking pretty much. Easily easily mimicked, never duplicated. So it you can never do that. And then fifth, Quincy Jones. He had the benefit of Quincy Jones. Most artists don't have that nowadays. You have these great moguls and things like that, but you don't have someone, a musician to the core like Quincy Jones was. Um, Looking him up, he worked with Ray Charles. He was on the Ray Charles movie as well, um, played by Lorenz Tate. So he was working with Ray Charles when he was in his younger years. I want to say he was a teenager because he couldn't even get into clubs. He was working with Sammy Davis Jr. He was working with Louis Armstrong. Of course, he was working with Michael Jackson. So Michael Jackson had a first encounter with one of the greatest musicians of all time, and the rest in peace to Quincy Jones as well. Very influential in the music business. Doesn't get a lot of respect or a lot of clout or get a lot of recognition because he's an older artist, and he wasn't really a solo artist per se. He was more behind the scenes as a composer, a producer, a songwriter, and all these different things. So Quincy Jones was very influential in Michael Jackson's career, and he steered him in the right direction. So, and I think this biopic movie that's coming out will show the musical genius of Quincy Jones behind the scenes, because I think he was very influential into getting Michael Jackson in the right start. Because I don't know if there would be a Michael Jackson without a Quincy Jones. We know there would be a Quincy Jones without a Michael Jackson, but I don't know if there would be a Michael Jackson without a Quincy Jones because he was so influential and he had a different ear for music and he was a true musician. Like I said, he plays several instruments. He sings some of the greatest: Sammy Davis, Ray Charles, Louis Armstrong. True musicians at heart that can play several instruments and just play music by ear. So it was a lot different back then, and Quincy definitely had a different ear. So that's one. So that's the last reason why Michael Jackson can never be duplicated as an artist and as a person. So tell me your thoughts about Michael Jackson, and until next time, I'll see you next time.